In 1993, Nelson Mandela was jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize with Frederick Willem de Klerk, the last president of apartheid-era South Africa. The prize recognized their efforts to peacefully end apartheid and establish a multiracial democracy through negotiation rather than conflict. At the time, South Africa was undergoing intense political transformation. Violent clashes, deep mistrust, and uncertainty surrounded the country's transition. Despite these tensions, Mandela and de Klerk worked to dismantle apartheid laws and prepare for the nation's first democratic elections. Mandela's Nobel lecture was delivered in Oslo on December 10, 1993. As president of the African National Congress and a former political prisoner, his presence symbolized a remarkable journey from repression to global recognition. The speech took place just months before South Africa would hold its historic 1994 elections.
Friends, I have a bit of a cold, and my voice does not want to cooperate. But I will not allow it to decide my program. In the light of what has been said here, I think I should put the matter in proper context, as I have done on a number of occasions. I was spending a holiday in the Bahamas a few years back, and I was taking a walk when I met a couple, and the gentleman stopped and said, Mr. Mandela. I said, many people mistake me for that chap. And he said, he turned to his wife and said, Mom, Mr. Mandela. She was absolutely unimpressed. And she said, what is he famous for? And the husband, in his embarrassment, dropped his voice and said, Mr. Mandela, Mr. Mandela. She said, I asked, what is he famous for? And without waiting for an answer, she turned to me and said, what are you famous for? I couldn't answer that question. But I want to say that of the international bodies that we have, the United Nations is the most significant. One can go into details in spelling out its performance, but I just want to cite one example, which I hope all of you will appreciate why we should support that organization. The First World War broke out in 1914, and 25 years later, we had the Second World War. That was in 1939 to 1945. It is now 54 years since the end of the Second World War. There has been no Third World War. It is true, there have been regional conflicts, some of them very violent, but no world conflagration has taken place since 1945. And those, therefore, who wanted to get involved in conflict resolution should always relate their activities to the world body, whether it is resolving a conflict in one country or a conflict between various countries. Once you say the United Nations, its charter calls upon all its members to try and resolve their problems by peaceful means, you then have a solid start. And depending on the specific problem you are required to solve. But the fact that you should relate your efforts to the United Nations is a very powerful weapon in your hands. We have been involved in conflict resolution in our country, when, as I have pointed out before, we had to try and change ourselves as individuals, because there's no use trying to change others if you yourself are unable to change yourself. And the problem that faced us was that our emotions said, it is revolting for me to go and talk to people whom for more than 3 centuries have persecuted our people and treated us like flies. That is what our feeling said. We were thinking through our blood when we said so. But our brains said something totally different. Our brains said, if you don't talk to your enemy, this country will go up in flames. And innocent human beings, men, women, children, and the aged, will be slaughtered. And our brains prevailed over our blood. And we sat down. We sat down and talked. When you have a strong case, you don't have to resort to violence. You actually wanted to meet your opponent because he cannot answer your case. If you give him a chance to use violence, you'll never convince him. It is going to be the strength of the weapons that you command that is going to prevail. Whereas if you sit and talk, you can put anybody with a viewpoint contrary to yours against the wall, on the carpet. And that is what we did. Now, many serious political commentators said, you will never be able to have a peaceful transformation in South Africa. We confined them. We had that peaceful transformation. We were working with the international community, especially through the United Nations. We had a second case. When it was announced that I was going to Libya, the State Department worked a figure at me and said, if you go there, we will withdraw our aid to South Africa. I must confess I spoke more from my blood, which was boiling, than from my brain. And I said, nobody anywhere in the universe, not only in the world, in the universe, is going to dictate to me. I am going to Libya. Then they countered by saying we will withdraw our aid to South Africa. I say, please withdraw it. In any case, the aid you are giving us in comparison with the aid you are getting from others is peanuts. But a very humorous member of the Congress put me on the carpet. He said, well, if it is peanuts, don't eat them. But I went to Libya, and many people, including heads of states, said you will never be able to convince Gaddafi to hand over those suspects. I and His Royal Highness here, representing King Fahd, we were able to persuade Gaddafi to hand over those suspects. We won his confidence. Again, in that case, we worked closely with the United Nations, and we kept on reminding President Gaddafi that the Charter calls upon all of us, including you, to try and settle problems through dialogue, through peaceful methods. Now, I do therefore urge you that when you face any situation, bear in mind consciously the Charter of the United Nations. But because this is a university and there are many students here, I want to tell a story of a young man who left his village to go and look for a good wife. For this purpose, he crossed vast plains, famous rivers, and the highest mountains, and visited every major city of that day. He met beauty queens, princesses, actresses, rich and influential women, women from the countryside and from the urban areas. And when he had gone right round that world, he could not see the girl he was looking for. He then returned to his fatherland and eventually reached his village. He was going back to die because he saw no reason why he should continue living when he had failed in his most fervent dream. But as he entered his village, he saw the girl from next door. They were about the same age. They went to the same school. They went out dancing together. But throughout that period, he never saw in this woman the girl of his dreams. But having gone right round the world, he now realized that this is the woman he left his village to go and look for, leaving her next door. What that means is that you must develop self-confidence, confidence in yourself, because you are not only an asset to the nation, not only leaders of tomorrow. Each and every one of you has the ability, the qualities to reach at the top position in your country, as long as you have confidence in yourself and then acquire the best instrument for you to be able to save your society, which is education. Now, I would like to urge young people not only to think in terms of themselves as individuals. Of course, you must improve yourself in order to be able to serve your society. But you acquire that education in order to serve your country. As it has been said by a writer coming from this area, that one of the striking features of modern times is the emergence in every part of the country, of the globe, of men and women who have selected the world as the theater of their operations, who are able to fight the suppression of human rights, the question of illiteracy, the question of poverty, which is the single most important challenge facing humanity today. Those men and women are prepared to fight these social evils wherever in the world they are to be found. We in South Africa have been the beneficiaries of that new feature which has been identified by this author in this part of the world. And that is the reason why we have enormous respect for the international community and for the masses of the people in the United States of America and elsewhere who demonstrated almost every day in the South African embassy to say we are here to tell you that we are part and parcel of those who have condemned apartheid as a crime against humanity. The people of South Africa would have fought hard even without the support of the international community. But the cost of that struggle would have been too crushing for us. And it would have taken a long time for us to liberate our country. We were able to liberate our country because we were supported by the United Nations and the international community as a whole. We are therefore very grateful, and we don't know exactly what words to choose, which will indicate to you the depth of our indebtedness to you. Now, as I concluded my remarks somewhere yesterday, I was having a discussion with a 5-year-old young lady who then asked me, "How old are you?" I said, "Well, I really do not know, but I was born long, long ago." She said, 5 years ago? I say, no, much longer than that. Then she asked, "Why did you go to jail?" I say, "No, I didn't go to jail because I wanted. Some people sent me there." "Who?" I say people who didn't like me. She said, how long did you stay there? I say again, I can't remember. But it was a very, very long time. And she said, you are a stupid old man, aren't you? Now, if you think what I have said here is stupid, please be a little more diplomatic than that young lady.
More than 3 decades after Mandela received the Nobel Peace Prize, South Africa remains a democracy, but it faces deep social and economic challenges. Although apartheid ended, inequality, unemployment, and racial tensions persist, often reflecting the unresolved legacy of institutionalized segregation. Mandela's commitment to reconciliation, justice, and peace laid the foundation for democratic governance. Yet, successive governments have struggled to fully realize the inclusive vision he championed. Corruption, poor public services, and slow economic growth have fueled public frustration and protest. Today, Mandela's legacy is both celebrated and critically examined. His peaceful approach to transition remains a global model, but many South Africans question whether the compromises of the 1990s delivered enough tangible change. The spirit of his Nobel Prize endures, but its promise remains unfinished.